Okay, hi everyone. We're going to do week 9 commentary for our topic 9 on strategic planning. And I'm going to start right away with talking about the participation activities. So both participation activities are group team projects. So one person from the group can upload that. And again, what you can do is you can use ChatGPT as a support, as long as you acknowledge that you did use it, okay? And 9B has been changed, and I'm just scrunching it down, and I'll get to 9B here, is that it's only going to require you to do a balanced scorecard and a balanced scorecard strategy map for Tim Hortons. So the first part is to submit a pastel analysis and a SWOT analysis. And again, I'd recommend that you go through this webinar to see how this all ties together before you start it, before you watch this video. And I think that will give you some clues on how to step through this whole process. And then the next thing is to submit a balanced scorecard and then a balanced scorecard strategy map for Tim Hortons. And again, you can use ChatGPT, but again, acknowledge it. So that's where that is, and that's due on Sunday. And the date would be, let me see here, the date would be November the 12th. Okay, so you can go from there, and then I'll get into the presentation now. So we're in the sort of the continuum here, the range of perspective, and strategic planning falls within the quantitative part of management principles and the systems part. And I can't emphasize enough, about the systems requirement, the systems thinking requirement. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background. But I also want to let you know that you'll see that I've highlighted many things in yellow. And when you're looking to study for the test, those highlighted yellow activities on these slides will point you to where you should focus in your studies. Okay, so I'm going to continue to do that till the end of the term. I just kind of got on that, and I found that seems to be helping people kind of get their head around all this material. I realize there's a lot of material in this course, and so that I'm trying to streamline to show you what's really important, and I'm also trying to provide you with the experience I've had, especially in strategic planning. I've done strategic planning now for many, many years, and I actually did some research into strategic planning when I was in charge of the strategic planning process at TELUS, so that I've got a lot of background in that, and then I've created a lot of worksheets and process designations or illustrations on how to do certain things. So if you have any questions even beyond this webinar, please contact me. I can share a lot of information with you because this is my wheelhouse. This is what I've done for many companies, and also related to that is a lot of business planning and working with small and medium-sized businesses, as well as working with corporations. Okay, so that's where that is. So let's get started. And to understand, like, strategic planning is all about understanding the connections, all about understanding the interdependencies and how one interdependency will be affected by another one, or a causal thing. And when you get your head around that, then you'll be a lot more open to understanding, what strategic planning is all about and how powerful that it could be. And it really will help you get down to the priorities of doing strategic planning to get things done. There's just not enough resources, and they're scarce resources. And what you want to do is you want to get the best effect for the resources that you put into it. And again, if we had another word for strategic planning, it would be building differential advantage, building competitive advantage, right? That's what strategic planning is all about. And I'll keep on coming back to that as we go through. So it's all these interconnections. So it would be good for you to really find out a little bit more about systems thinking, because as a system thinker, you'll be able to understand what's important in bringing or solving these complex, dynamic, ill-defined problems. And what you need to do is get a whole picture. And I would say go beyond that picture and get a whole movie video of what's going on to really get a sense of where you can be effective and where you can develop competitive advantage for the organization that you're working for. And then again, with those interconnections, understanding the causal, the causal effects around some of these interdependencies, so that you can know what's coming, and then looking at a timeline where you look at trends, and you look at trends in terms of what's happening externally, outside in the environment, and you look at trends, what's happening internally inside your organization. And one of the key things around this is that you look at converging trends. And what I mean by converging trends is, let's look at this. Who would have predicted that airline seats seem like they're smaller and smaller every year, at least for somebody like me. All right. But what was the converging trends? Well, the converging trends was, a lot of North Americans are sedentary, so they're not moving around. There's a lot more fast food and eating out, where calories are a lot more prevalent in your eating now than they ever would be. So there's a converging trend. Sedentary, fast food, and others. Those are all converging. So who would have kind of thought about, well, back in the 60s, well, 50 years from now, airlines chairs are going to have to be larger, right? So, and you look at those converging trends to either predict an opportunity, or predict a disconnect in what's going on, or predict a real big threat. So that's what brings this strategic planning to be more meaningful. And if I could say anything about strategic planning, one of the things that you should be looking at, down the road if you're involved in strategic planning, is look up what scenario planning is all about, because that with today's age, in today's age, with so much change going on so rapidly, scenario planning gets you ready, because it gets you thinking about certain things. So an unexpected may happen, but at least you've kind of thought about what the possibilities could be around those, and you do that by analyzing the risk in your organization, and that will kind of direct you to what you should be looking at for scenario planning, and then you'll be much more ready. And there's proof that it really works. I mean, Royal Dutch Shell, they predicted all the gas movement from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, and they made a bundle of money on that. And why? Is because they did some scenario planning, and it pointed to, oh, something's got to give here, and there won't be enough energy in Europe, so they're going to be looking for it from other places. And oh, by the way, look at the exploration that's been going on, in the USSR at that time, and then in Russia, and then you kind of put all that together, and next thing you know what to think about and how to plan for it. Okay, so rich pictures. So that's where you start. You get the view, from say even like GPS, in terms of understanding where the localities of different things are, because on GPS you can map demographics, you can map social characteristics, all kinds of things, to really get a picture of what's going on. And then from the pictures you start analyzing the connections, and then also you'll start seeing what the structure looks like, and you could tell what processes that you're going to need to be able to do that. So when you identify those connections, look at just a simple one for theater operations. Well, if you've got if you've got no vacancy, all right, that means you've got full seats. So that means you're going to make more money, all right, and so that you can identify all those connections around that piece. So here you are. So you have if you have unoccupied seats, well, then you're not going to make very much profit. So you may have to invest more, And if you get good reviews, then you're going to do more ticket sales, and then you'll have less unoccupied seats. So you can explain those relationships around that using a causal loop diagram in systems thinking, and then look at trends. And that's where I talked about not only looking at trends, but looking at converging trends to see what could come out of there. What are the connections? But what does it come down to? It comes down to understanding the issue and then solving these long-term plan or problems. And what you see then, you look at events and then you look at patterns. That's what system thinking is all about, is that understand what patterns are in front of you. And then what's normally hidden underneath those events and patterns are structures. And then, so what are the mental models driving those structures that create the patterns and the events? So those are the kind of things that you look at. So you want to solve problems in the long term. You detect those patterns, not just events. You use that causality to find out what's making what happen. Then you focus on those relationships. And that's why I get back to the initial thing that I said about focusing on interdependencies. You really have to understand how these things come together, and then you look at parts of that system in terms of the elements, how they're interconnected, and then what are the purpose and functions around those things. So that's just a little bit about systems thinking, but it'll put you in a better mindset to be able to analyze things when you get into strategic planning. Okay, so what's the approach to management around strategic planning? Well, you have to look at the inputs. You have to look at the processes that are going on, the outputs, the feedback, the environment, what's going on. And so here's our first little focus point, with the highlights in yellow. Strategic planning is all about competitive advantage. And then so that you look at the path of competitive advantage. And this little graph kind of tells you, what's going on is that, you develop you develop some competitive advantage in terms of using a different technology or a different management approach or whatever. And then as you develop that, then you'll increase your sales, and then you start deploying that. But at some point in time, once your competitors get a sense of what you're doing, they're going to want to emulate you, because if you're successful, they want to be there too. So what happens then? The market gets saturated, and the competition gets so high that your competitive advantage starts declining. So there's different strategies to use, while you're going through this initial process in terms of cost leadership. And we're going to talk about that. Differentiation, first mover advantage. If you're developing and you're the first mover in that footprint for this technology or whatever, you have a chance to get all the customers. And if you can retain them, then you've got a barrier to entry for your competitors going in. The time-based advantage in terms of just even timing, hitting the right timing. Like, who would have thought during pandemic that there'd be a run on latex gloves, right? So that if you had a lot in storage, you got a lot of sales. The technology advantage, and then how you bring about your strategy in terms of working with alliances and those kind of things. So with that strategic planning, employees can see the bigger picture because you set it up for them, and then you share this with the employees. And right from the start, when we talk about visions, if you can show that your employees are sharing that vision with themselves, now you've got a winning combination for you. It's I think I've talked about this. It's that famous FM station, called FIIM, like what's in it for me. So if you can demonstrate what's in it for your employees, they'll see themselves as part of that vision, and they'll work towards achieving the key goals of the organization. Okay, so I talked about this competitive advantage life cycle that we just went through, but let's look at this, beside a product life cycle. And you can see when and I'll talk about, say, DuPont. So DuPont is a chemicals firm. They produce different chemical agents and compounds that go into plastics and everything else. And their strategy was around, well, normally they were innovators, and they were the first in offering a particular new compound or chemical, right? So what they could do then is that they could get a lot of economic profit out of this because they could use premium pricing. And so they're in a development piece, and they're deploying, and then lo and behold, other chemical companies would see where DuPont is with the success that they've made with this compound or raw material for the chemical industry, and they would emulate that because want to get a piece of the action. And then lo and behold, then DuPont would be a little less competitive. So what would they do? They would drop their price to commodity pricing. And so when you're trying to come into a market, it's a lot harder to keep a lower price because you got so many investments that you have to make. So so what that would do then, that would be a barrier of entry for their competitors by dropping to a commodity price, and then they'd still maintain a big market share in the actual market. So that's what you're getting out of using this competitive advantage life cycle. So remember this: you develop, you deploy, and then you decline, and then realize how you're going to manage that in the process. But here's where the strategic planning process starts. And you'll notice that this is a highlight in yellow here. You start with evaluating the current performance of your organization. That's where you start. That's the baseline. When you've got a baseline, then you know where you're going. And then you conduct environmental scans. And when we talk about environmental scans, we talk about external environmental scans and internal. What's going on in the company? Where did it come from? Where's it going? What's working? What's not working? And then you project these future trends. And then there's a few more other things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Porter's 5 forces, and we're going to talk about the internal environmental scan, and then the external environmental scan, where we're going to talk about Pestel. And then from there, then you do a SWOT analysis. And again, understand what SWOT analysis is. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. I'll show you how that comes together in the next few slides. And from there, you design, and the slide doesn't have this, but you start with defining the problems or opportunities. And we call those strategic issues. And once we define those strategic issues, then we convert them into goals. And the thing is about problem solving is that if you do a really good job of defining the problem, you'll create 90% of the solution. So that's why if you can really analyze what those situations are in what is the problem or an opportunity, we call strategic issues, then you will have more focused and effective goals that you can create to be able to achieve the ends that you're looking for in your organization. And then from goals, when you're going down into the execution side, you have the goals and you have strategies on how you're going to execute around that. And those strategies at that point in the planning situation are much more focused or narrow than what the actual goals are. All right, and because that gets you into key objectives, and we're going to talk about SMART objectives and tactics and action plans. And how do you get success? Well, what gets measured gets done. So you need to track performance with key performance indicators, which are KPIs. And we have this technique called a balanced scorecard that was developed by Kaplan and Norton way back in the 60s at Harvard. And balanced scorecard is probably one of the better frameworks to be able to manage your metrics and have a picture, say for your board or your senior management, and even along in your middle management and further down in the organization, to really show where you're at and how you're getting there, and based on the targets that you've created, and then what you need to do, if you're not achieving those targets soon enough or as effectively as you'd like to. Okay, So this is a Xerox model back in the 70s that I've adopted, and then I've put a little bit of my own creation into this. But planning is just a gap analysis, right? So you start with the current state. That's the starting point. And the current state is, you start measuring the performance of an organization, but essentially is, where are we now? Where are we now? And then, where do we want to be? And that's the desired end state. And that's where you have the shared vision. Where should we be going? What's the directional piece to be doing that? And then in between then is, how do we get there? And then you create your goals. And this little fishbone here happens to be in Ishikawa. It's part of total quality management. And so it's how to put the right things in place to get to your desired end state. And the thing that you need to understand, if you set too many goals, you don't very much achieve anything. And so here's some work done by the Franklin Institute, and what they're saying is that if you really think about 2 or 3 goals and plan excellence around it, chances are you can achieve 2 to 3 goals. But if you're way out here and you have all kinds of goals, then you've diluted your effort and you may not get anything achieved. And that's what to look out. I'm not going to talk about this little piece here, but someday I will bring that up. All right, so where do we start? Well, the strategic plan needs to align with the organization's mission, vision, and value. And oh, by the way, alignment is the strongest formula to success. If you can get everybody going in the same direction and achieving the goals that are set by the organization, then you will be exceptional in creating, getting market share and bringing profits, because strategic planning is all about creating profits through competitive advantage. I mean, that's what it's all about. And the mission basically is, what business are you in? What are we doing in relation to our core values and what our customers really want? So you ask yourself, what's keeping our customers awake at night? That's what we're going to focus on. The vision is where you want to be in the future. And we always talk about the vision, about, have this picture about what it looks like. I'm saying, have a movie of what it looks like. What does the future desired end state feel like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What are people doing? What is the business community saying about your organization? What are the business magazines touting about how great you are? And that's how you kind of get to that key piece. And oh, by the way, how does that relate to your overall purpose? Why you were there in the first place? And then the shared values of yourself, the organization and the stakeholders are really key. And that's what sort of supports all this. And I'm going to show you, my layer cake illustration about how that works. But here's something to consider. So this is a standard process, where you have a vision and a mission and you have goals and objectives. But what really is important in strategic planning, the 3 main areas are your value proposition. And what your value proposition is, what is the offering that is so unique to your customers that they will be with you and not with your competitors? That value proposition is really important. And oh, by the way, that's where your strategy starts. It's inherent inside of your value proposition, and then you go from there to develop overall strategies down to, way down into your execution. And the best way to look at that is through the eyes of Michael Tracy and Fred Wiersma. And what they did was they talk about the value disciplines, and there's only 3 of them. There's product leadership. That's like a Hewlett-Packard, that putting out quality products, and they're known for that. That's their bread and butter. And then operational excellence. Well, that would be like, let's say, that Walmart's distribution system, or even say Amazon's distribution system. It's well-tuned machine, and that your deliveries are dependable. So that's operational excellence. And then customer intimacy. The U.S. Retail store Macy's was known for such great customer intimacy, and there would be stories about how employees went out of their way to please customers. So what Tracy and Wiersema are saying is that you pick one, and then on the other two, you have to be at least as good as your competition. And so that, let's just say, you pick customer intimacy. Well, you may be a boutique retailer that your customer service is so fantastic that customers will flock to you, and that's the basis of developing further strategy to be able to be successful. And I'll get to that as we get to the other slides. But the whole idea of this slide, if your strategy is right, and then your business model builds in competitive advantage, then it's all about the execution of your value proposition. So this third one, third one is the business model, and there's an author called Osterweiler, and he's built canvases, in terms of value proposition canvas, ideal customer canvas, and a business model canvas. And in my experience, I've done a lot of business plans for small and medium-sized businesses over the years through my consulting, and most people don't have their business model depicted. It's only up in their head. And if you can outline that, and if people understand, how your business works and what are the critical success factors inside of that business depicted in your business model, then something, you've got a good formula for getting the things done. So focus on your value proposition, your strategy, and your business model, and then as well as setting up the requirements to be able to to get to execution when you're down there. Okay, so a little bit more of yellow highlighting. So what is strategic management? Strategic management is formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions. You hear that? Cross-functional decisions. So alignment that enable an organization to achieve its objectives, its goals. And so that's what it's all about. You're trying to find ways to align the organization at all levels. And with my experience, especially in large corporations, there was no doubt in a lot of different divisions, they had created goals that were conflicting with each other in terms of the divisions. So they have to really start from the top and get a sense of where is this overall company going, this overall organization, and then how will I be rewarded for the overall success of the organization, apart from myself as the head of a division running my division. So it's all about alignment, and that's the key. Just wanted to let you know that there's a software company out there called Cascade Strategy, and just look them up. And if you happen to need to do some strategic planning in the future when you leave this this program, look them up. And what they do is, it's probably one of the most effective software programs, because all the people that are involved in the planning of the organization are tied in, and they can see what's happening real time, and have a better appreciation. And what's the end result? Alignment. Getting done. Doing the right things right, and making profits and having a strong competitive advantage across the industry. Okay, so here's just a general strategic management model, but you have environmental events, from what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the firm, what's going on down in the functions, what's going on outside of your organization, and then what happens then? You take a look at the competitiveness inside of your industry and down the street from you, and understanding what your mission statement is, and then taking a look at based on your overall corporate strategy, what geographic market area are you going to go in, then get it down into the business strategy around what segment are you going to look at, who's your primary competition, what's your target market, And then once you understand that situation analysis, you do it, in terms of a strengths and a weakness analysis. Then you can really get a sense of, okay, what's doable and how can you achieve your vision, in a certain way. And then that results in these long-term objectives and short-term objectives. So that's sort of a general strategic management model that I pulled out to kind of give you that. But when I'm doing my work, what I do is I build a strategic house for an organization. And what's a strategic house? Well, you can see that the foundation, is the core values. And then you take a look at the vision of what that vision is. So I did this for the Cultural Alliance in Ontario. So I did a strategic plan with them, find out, what business are they in, what's their mission, and then what are the critical success factors and meaning. So what is it that you're going to do that will ensure that you will be successful in achieving your vision, and achieving the outcomes that you've laid out, based on your vision. And so that once you determine that, then you can go down into breaking down the vision into various focus areas. And it's all about chunking, because if you looked at your overall vision, you might get lost in all the details. So when you start looking into the focus areas, then you can start creating, based on your critical success factors, creating goals that will get down to getting to the outcomes that you want to get to, in your plan. Okay, so now you need a process. So how does this all fit together? So here's, like a 3-phase process that I'd offer, and this is sort of textbook, but I've kind of refined it based on my experience. But you can see the first part is, what's the situation, right? How do I analyze what's going on? And you look at the external environment and you look at the internal environment. That's the first phase. And then you start saying, okay, now it's time to start formulating the strategy, right? And the strategy, is inherent in a lot of these elements, so that your strategy is inside of your mission. It's inside of your vision. Inside of your mission is your value proposition, all right? So that you can see that already you've intonated, am I going to be a company or organization of operational excellence? Am I going to be a company of customer intimacy? Am I going to be a company of product innovation? I picked that, and then that kind of determines down the road. And again, your core values will drive that. So then you create your focus areas, like I showed you in the strategic house. And understand what your critical success factors are. And then once you've done your analysis through PESTLE, through Porter's 5 Forces, through McKinsey 7S, there's all these different techniques that you can use to be able to get a sense of where you are, and again, in some cases, where do you want to be? Then you can delineate the opportunities, and you can delineate, the problems that you need to solve. And then to do that, you set up your goals, and then those goals will develop in strategy and objectives, key results areas, down to even policies and procedures in your organization. And then you start implementing, in phase 3, in terms of action plans and initiatives. And you certainly strike a budget for that. You get down to procedures. And then again, what gets measured gets done. So you develop a performance matrix to understand how you're going to determine if you're successful or not, and which translates into a balanced scorecard and a balanced scorecard strategy map. So that's the process of going through there. And the thing is, the first step, evaluate your current performance. You notice that's a nice highlighted yellow. So I talked about these different things, but here's what the strategic planning decision-making process looks like. So right here, you evaluate your current performance. You see what's working, what's not working. Where are we in terms of market share in that? Or if we're a new company, where can we start looking to do market share? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this McKinsey 7S. McKinsey is, an international consultant, and known for, great planning frameworks and everything else. So they've come up with the 7S. So you take a look of inside your company. What is your structure like? Is it appropriate for your vision? Is it appropriate for reaching or achieving your outcomes that you've planned? What is your key strategy? Again, is it aligned? What are your shared values? Those are your core values. Will that support that? What are the skills? The skills are really the competencies that you have in your organization. So again, if you're a gaming company, well then, that your core competence will probably be a little bit of artificial intelligence and programming. Those are core competencies that will give you competitive advantage. And then the type of staff, the style is what kind of style. Remember, we talked about style in the other topics in terms of, people-oriented style or task-driven style, those kind of things. And then what systems do you have? Are you automated enough? Or do you have an enterprise software that can bring everything together if you're a larger company and you want to see what's going on? So that this goes into your environmental scan, your external scan. We're going to talk about PESTLE, and then you can take a look at determining what the external critical success factors are, determine what the internal critical success factors are, and then you get down to what's the situation in terms of what are our strengths and weaknesses, and what are opportunities and threats out there that we need to be aware of to help us succeed. And then, review and revise, and then generate and evaluate the best alternatives, and those are into objectives. You implement those strategies, and then you're back into what gets a measure gets done, and you evaluate and control. Okay, so you have to take a look at the cascading of your strategic plan. And so you start with, top level managers. By the way, you see that these are highlighted in yellow. Well, no, they're looking at the corporate level of those plans. And I'll get into corporate strategy in the next few slides. The middle managers, well, they're looking at the business and those tactical plans that they need and those tactical strategies. And then the lower level managers, they're all about executing right at the production level of the offering, be it a service or a product. And so they have functional plans that are operational. And those level managers are working more on a 12-month cycle than they are on a 5-year cycle or a 10-year cycle like the top level managers. So that's where that goes. So plans differ in breadth, time frame, and specificity, all right, as you go down through these levels. So that, what you're doing is you're cascading, strategic to operational. That's what you're doing. So you start off with your vision and mission statement, and now you have strategic goals at the senior level. You have tactical goals, and those are still strategy, right, at the middle management, and then you have operational goals at lower management, and that's that's where you get into the functional. So production will have probably maybe a zero defects objective, and that would be part of their strategy to manage quality, to be more competitive in their market, right? Those kind of things. So you have this cascading of goals. So you start with the company, you get down to division and departmental, and then you get down to functional, where right down into the project. So all these kind of are umbrellas for each one as you go down there. So a lot of things, a lot of questions. How will you measure success? How will you track them? Will actions happen to help you achieve your goals? All those things that you need to look at, but all kinds of benefits. And the whole idea is that if your employees understand, what the vision of the company is, they're part and feel part of the core values. They're exercising those core values, and if they can understand, and oh, by the way, let me start with this one. If they can understand how their job affects the overall strategy and the outcomes of the strategic planning, that's a winning combination. And guess what? In North America, only 9% of employees can connect what they're doing with their job to the overall strategy of the corporation. So you as managers have a lot of work to do, right? Going from there. So what's the limitations? Well, you need buy-in. You know, it's a WIIFM. You know, what's in it for them? What's in it for all the employees to feel like they have a share, a share in that vision, and that they will align with those corporate goals, and they will align their personal goals with those corporate goals, and have continued commitment. And oh, by the way, they can have all the commitment in the world, but as managers, if you're not providing them the resources and the capabilities to be able to achieve those goals and objectives, well, then it's not going to happen. And again, all about alignment. Okay, so for the first participation, this is just to let you know, so that you're going to need to do a pastel and a SWOT analysis for Tim Hortons. So go into reports on Tim Hortons, use ChatGPT, let me know that you've used it, and start building that pastel and SWOT. But I'm going to show you just beyond this announcement here, how this all connects. All right. Okay, so when you look at the external environmental scan, there's in that pestle, see, there's political conditions, there's economic conditions, socio-cultural conditions, technological, environmental, and legal. So it covers, a large scope of where some of the issues can be in terms of problems and opportunities, right? So you take a look at that, and here's some examples on, what are the government policies? Are they affecting your organization right now, or could they affect your organization in 2 years? Those kind of things. What are some of the technological innovations? Is there a disruptive technology that's coming on board that can wipe, your sales out? Because, you look at how the GPS function in the smartphone has really taken its toll on the specific GPS companies, and they had to innovate to stay in the business, right? Those kind of things, right? So here's all the examples for that. But as part of my consulting, I've created these forms for different analysis activities. And if you take a look at, and I spell this a little different, it's Pestel or Pestle, one or the other. If you go into the internet, you'll see both. All right. So what you look at is you look at those analysis factors. And I have, I think this is like 16 pages of different things to take a look at, say the political and the environmental and the social and those kind of things. But here's what's important. All right. Here's what's really important is that it's one thing to kind of, talk about, what that issue is. So trading policies, one might be that, you want to enter into a particular country to sell your product, and lo and behold, you find out that they have quotas. All right. So they have quotas. So that'll prevent you from limiting the quantities of what you can export. Well, what's the impact? And so you measure that. Is it high? Will that really affect your profitability? Should you be, going somewhere else? And is it right now that it's happening, or are those quotas going to be established in 6 months, or are they going to be taken away in 12 months? Does that have a positive or a negative effect on your business? What kind of impact? Is it an increasing impact or a decreasing impact? And then what's the relative importance of that based on your overall business? So you're putting some context around each one of those key factors that you're analyzing in the pestle. And okay, you don't have to do this for your, for your 9A activity, but I'd like you to be aware of that. And if you can show me a little bit of thinking around that, that's going to go a long way. All right. Okay. So here's where I talked about the internal. I think I've explained this quite a bit, but it gives you, this is the McKinsey 7S model. So it kind of defines, what's under these, matter of fact, now you've got some gobbledygook here, but it's the titles that are really important. And you would define this for your own organization along with your core values. And then you've looked externally at the environment, but now you want to take a look at the competition, and that could be external or inside of your trading area, right? But this is key, and you notice that this is highlighted in yellow, and you really take a look at the competitive rivalry of how strong is it? Is it a dog-eat-dog industry that you're in? And if it is, then that might interest you in kind of going into non-competitive territory. And by the way, there's a book that can help you to do that. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks about how to get into uncontested markets so that you're not getting chewed up by competition, and you can be like a first in and establish yourself in that market. But there's other things around that in terms of understanding who's coming into into your market. What's the threat like, and the bargaining power of your suppliers. Your suppliers saying, well, I'll give you an example. So I was a small water treatment installer in Calgary. That was part of my business called Home Life Enviro. And I went to a leading supplier of water treatment equipment. And they said to me, Gary, you're not big enough. We don't want to supply to you. So that's a lot of power, right? To say that. So lo and behold, I found someone else who was willing to supply, and not only that, offered me really good terms. And not only that, they were like 15 minutes from my location, so I didn't have to keep very much inventory. So the bargaining power of your suppliers has a big impact on your business. And then the bargaining power of your buyers. So here's an example. So Home Depot, I'm a snow shovel supplier, and Home Depot will say, oh, you want to sell snow shovels to Home Depot? Okay, well, this is what you're going to do. You have to supply them at 400 shovels at a time, okay? And we're only going to pay you, because of our point of sale system, when we know when we're selling them, we're only going to pay you for those shovels, when we sell them. And oh, by the way, if they're not selling, you got to take all your inventory out, right? That's the power of a buyer, and understand that. And then the threat of substitutes in terms of, okay, I'm selling snow shovels, but lo and behold, here's somebody came out with this innovation of a snow blower that's would just far surpass the production capabilities of using a shovel, right? And so that you've got to look at the threat of substitutes, especially when it comes to disruptive technologies. So those are the kind of things that you look at. And oh, look at this, there's a yellow arrow here. So you should know a lot about the threats of new entrants, how you can make a barrier to entry, how you can achieve economies of scale that keep them out because you can keep your prices down, how you can create brand loyalty, all these other things, capital requirements, all those things, switching costs. So these are all the elements of a strategy that you can look at, to keep new entrants out or keep them at bay or force them out, right? And what I've done is, again, I have another large form that I help my clients fill out for each one of those factors. And then I talk about, what's going on right now? Do you have, is there a degree of seller concentration in your area, or there's nobody there? Okay, and what's that going to look like 2 years from now? So that, again, it gives you context for analyzing these factors to give you a sense of, where do you want to be in that future, based on where it is right now. And if there's some elements there that you need to, that are challengers or whatever, you're going to reflect that in your plans, okay? Okay, so here's a little bit about the SWOT process. And this is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. This is the key thing in your test. So, pay attention in terms of the SWOT process, not so much about all what I'm going to tell you here, but you take a look at strengths versus opportunities. So that tells you, okay, we have some strengths in our organization, and there's an external opportunity out there. We could take advantage of that. So how can we do that? How can we define that opportunity? And mainly the strengths and weaknesses are related internally to the organization, and the opportunities and threats are related to outside of the organization, right? So let's take a look at this. With you have a certain weakness and there's a threat out there, my goodness, you could go out of business. So what are you going to do to solve that problem? And when you get down to out here, you define what I call a strategic issue. And that strategic issue gives you all the information that you need to create a goal. And if you define the issue clearly, if you define the issue, as you understand it, then the solution of creating that goal will just pop right out. All right, and that's what it will do. Again, okay, so here's strengths, things your company does well, qualities that separate you from your competitors, blah, blah, blah. Weaknesses, things your company lacks. Opportunities, underserved markets for specific products. Emerging need for your product or service, that's outside. Threats, negative press or changing customer attitudes or preferences, towards your products and your company. So those are the kind of things. Look at this. This is all in yellow. So, inside the company, strengths and weaknesses, external to the company, opportunities and threats. All right. So here's more examples of what it is. This comes, right out of your PowerPoint deck that's in topic 9, produced by Professor Powers. So you can see where I've kind of highlighted in her slides, what's important. And here's how it all comes together. I told you about this is internal to the organization. This is external. So lo and behold, the McKinsey 7S is to analyze your strengths and weaknesses. Your PESTLE, or PESTLE as I call it, is how to analyze your opportunities and threats, along with your competition analysis from Porter's 5 forces. So this is how this all comes together. And that's why I wanted to give you this so you could understand doing 9A of your activity piece. And again, I have another form. Look at this. This is just page 9 out of 17 in terms of I give my clients a whole pile of things to think about in terms of strengths, and then identify the strengths that are relative to their organization, and then as well as with weaknesses, identify what's relevant to weaknesses in their organization. And then on the outside of it, looking at PESTLE and Porter's 5 forces, what kind of opportunities are out there that your organization can serve, and then what kind of threats are there, okay, out there that you have to deal with. So this is how it all starts to come together. So I showed you how PESTLE and the Porter's 5 forces come to look at the opportunities and threats of the organization, and then how McKinsey 7S is a good framework to be able to analyze what the internal scan looks like in terms of strengths and weaknesses. And that gets you to the SWOT analysis. From the SWOT analysis, you define the problem or you define the opportunity as a strategic issue. And then as a goal, now you classify the action to solve that problem or to take advantage of the opportunity. And then you create a strategy to direct your resources to be able to deal with that issue, that problem or opportunity. And again, it's all where are you now? And that's where you're doing this analysis. Where do you want to be? And all of a sudden now these goals are, from the goals in here are, how are you going to get there? So that's how you think about it. Here's a little bit about, how to create an issue statement. It's not in the test, but I just wanted to give you a sense of, how do you create issue statements? And again, I've got a whole, Learn, Do, Crytel Learn, Do worksheet on how to do that. But this is one page that kind of gives you the context of what goes on. So again, goals, they're a desired outcome for individuals, groups, or entire organization. And then it deals with the how the goal will be achieved, all right, the strategy. So the goal you create, the strategy, how are you going to do that? And then how you're going to do that translates into objectives, initiatives, projects, action plans, right, going forward. Okay, so back to my, layer cake analogy. You can see that, if you don't have the right ingrained core values, if this is a weak layer in your layer cake, that means everything above this is going to collapse because it won't be able to support that. So if you haven't set the right priorities, and that's what your goals do, they set priorities in your organization, it's going to be really hard then to have people like command and execute on the strategies, objectives, and initiatives. So everything is dependent, but again, in this case, I'm a big proponent of values-driven organizations, and you can see that the foundation and your identity of the organization lies within your common beliefs and your ingrained core values, and then how you behave in terms of attitudes. That's your culture. All right. So you're enlightened. That your values, your core values, they help you make decisions. So they help you govern, and then your attitudes. Well, that forms your identity and how you're going to behave in the marketplace. Okay, this is another cookie. This is another addition to goal execution. If you really want to know how to develop goals that you can execute on, this is probably the best information that I ever come across in my career, and it's in the Franklin Covey Institute. And there's it's the 4 disciplines of execution. And this is where I got this little piece when I showed you, the value proposition, strategy, and business model. I had this little thing down in here, and the planning gap in terms of where are you now, where do you want to be. I keep reminding you of, be focused. Keep it down. If you want excellence in execution of your goals, keep them lower. All right. So you focus on the wildly important goals, right? And then we're going to talk about other things, but that's where that is. So, and this is how it all cascades down, right? I talked about those focus areas that is not in the material that you need to study, but that really sets the area where the goals need to be. And then you go into objectives, but the strategy drives these objectives. So here in this area, because I'm going to be talking later on about corporate goals, business goals, and corporate strategies, business strategies, and functional strategies. But in this part of the execution, the strategy at this point is more specific than a goal, right? Highlighted in yellow. All right, so let's talk about objectives. And I'm sure many of you have learned about SMART goals. They need to be specific. They need to be measurable. What gets measurable gets done. There's so many objectives out there that are out there, and people have no idea how they're doing versus what the target was. So you've got to make it easy for them to measure their progress, and they have to be achievable. And I talked about a change model where Dutton has talked about there's 2 main things to be able to make manageable change. One is urgency, and the other one is doability. So if it isn't a small enough chunk of things that you have to do, people can't get their head around that, and they will be frustrated, and there'll be a lot of procrastination because they can't see how they could even get started. So you got to make that objective achievable. You got to make it relevant, and then you got to make it time limit. You got to have it done by a certain time, and that's the urgency part. So again, you can see the achievable part is the doability, the time limited is the urgency, and that's all part of Dutton's approach to making effective change. And again, now here's a little bit of Gary work that happened here, and you can have these well-written, excellent publications of objectives, but if you don't know, if you don't get your people involved around them, they ain't going to happen. All right, so you got to look at how are you going to engage those people to achieve, get to the outcomes of this specific goal, and do they have the skills to be able to do that? And in my experience, sometimes a lot of goals and objectives are just brainstormed, and no one has any idea what's required to get them done and how they're going to do them. But they go up the line, and then all of a sudden, my performance appraisal is locked into this goal I agreed to, and I don't know what to do. So here's another thing: is make sure that when you create this objective and this goal, make sure that the people have the skills to be able to do that. And if they don't have the skills and they don't have the tools, well, then give them the training. So you've got the outcome-driven part of the goal or objective and the smart part, but you need the behavior changing part, to make this sustainable, to be able to get to those outcomes. And here's another piece, and this piece is put here just before I talk about overall strategies, because that's where it fits. Because the BCG that's the Boston Consulting Group matrix. It's been around since Adam, right? It's been around a long, long time. And lo and behold, you better know a little bit about it. It's highlighted in yellow. And if you want to gain market share, or if you want the potential to generate cash, you got to understand where you are in that matrix, and what's worth investing in and what's worth just getting rid of, right? So here's where they came up with this this matrix, and again, there's it's a two-dimensional matrix. So this is growth of opportunity, from low to high, and this is market share from low to high. So let's look at this. So if you have an opportunity that's going on, and it has a high growth opportunity, but right now you have low market share, well, that's a question mark. You really need to validate what you're doing here, because you might have low market share because it just might not have the ingredients to be able to take off and generate more and more sales. So you're going to need to find out what's going on. So that points to, you got to look at your strategy to see how you manage that, that high growth opportunity that at this point in time has low market share. The next one, I guess maybe I should have started with this one. High growth opportunity and high market share, that this is a winner, right? It's a star. So that that you can put full emphasis on this, because that's going to create the most profit for you. That's where you're getting the most competitive advantage, right? So your strategic plan will be focused more on that. Your strategies will be focused on that. And let's go back to this one. Low growth opportunity, low market share. Well, it's a dog. So what do? You get rid of it. You divest it, right? You sell it off or you liquidate it. Selling it off, you just sell it. Maybe somebody can do better with it. When you liquidate it, you're just taking it apart, and maybe you can recover some machinery or whatever, and get a little bit of money for the inventory you have and everything else. And on this one, this is for sort of in some ways dated technology, or you've been producing this product forever, and it's still selling, but it's not selling like it used to. All right. So, you've got high market share, which means that, you've got high penetration, but very low growth opportunities. There's nowhere to go. So there's two ways of doing that. One is you can reinvest in it to be able to, bring out more opportunity that could grow. Or what you do is you just pull cash out of it until you possibly can, and then you just you just get rid of it after that. So that's where milking it. So if you take a look at where I can't remember the name of it, the movie tapes, right, that were there like here maybe 25 years ago. I mean, it was that technology was going out because streaming and downloading and whatever. So I can't remember the name of the company. They rented those movies for as long as they possibly can. So they milked a cow until they couldn't anymore, and then they just went out of business, right? So that's what that one's all about. Okay, so here's a little more information on that. It's a highlight that you need to investigate. But let me talk about strategy though. And in all this sheet that I'm showing you, strategy involves trade-offs, but it's as much about what you're not going to do as much as it is what you are going to do. All right. So you understand, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but this is what I'm not going to do. And that really has a bearing on your success. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Cirque du Soleil, right? So Cirque du Soleil is a circus, right? But it probably made more money in 1 year than Barnum and Bailey made in the whole generation. And why? It's because yeah, they said, yeah, we're still a circus. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to just wow people with acrobatic acts and that. But what we're not going to do is no animals, because of animal rights groups and the legalities that are involved with it. That's what we're not going to do. The next thing, okay, we're going to have a great event, and we're going to use technology, to be able to enhance, the creation of that event. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to have a three-ring circus, because nobody knows where to look. All right. And one of the things is, what we're not going to do is that we're not going to charge, like family rates, for just families. We're going to go, what we are going to do is we're going to go after and, business customers, because they have money to buy their customers, high price seats. And so that's what this strategy is all about. It's as much about what not to do as it is what to do. And you got to remember that. And it's flexible, and it's open, and it deals more with actions that should be taken. And this has been my experience. I've been in this game for many, many years now. And what I found, that sometimes you have these brilliant strategies, but you can't take it to the next level where you execute on it. And that's why, with the Covey Franklin Institute, or the Franklin Covey Institute, that's where they really got down into, how do we make our goals, effective and sustainable, and get to the outcomes that they want to get to. And that's what's key. So your strategy has to be good, but your execution of strategy, that's what you really need to think about going through. Okay, a few more details I'm not going to cover on this one, but now let's get to, so I talked about the Boston Consulting Group and their matrix, because I wanted that as sort of a little bit of an intro into the levels of strategy. So there's mainly 3 levels of strategy. The one at the top, sometimes it's called grand strategy. So if you went into Google, you would either find corporate strategy, or you'd call, or you'd see grand strategy. But we call it corporate strategy. And there's many components to a corporate strategy, but 3 that are highlighted in this slide are, growth. So from a corporate point of view, the top executive is saying, okay, should we just be selling in the United States, or should we sell in Europe and Asia? Right. So that's a growth strategy. Or should we? We know that we're doing really well in the U.S. and we're doing the right things. So how can we just make sure that it's stable? The CEO of Kellogg's, way back when, said, from a stability point of view, he said, you know what, we're just going to farm better. It meant that, hey, we're not going to diverse into other unrelated products. We're not going to diversify or we're not going to vertically integrate or horizontally integrate, or like up or down, and vertically integrate up or down, or horizontally integrate. And I'm going to get to those terms as well, because you got to know something about that. We're just going to do it right, and we're just going to do it. We're going to be better at it. We're going to farm better, right? That was a general statement. So that was the stability strategy. And then retrenchment. And I'm going to talk about retrenchment in detail to be able to do that. And then we get into the business strategy. So that's sort of the middle level. And that's where Michael Porter comes in. And Michael Porter generated what he calls the generic strategies. And it's cost leadership, and it's differentiation. So cost leadership is like, Walmart, you'll get the lowest price. And people go to Walmart because they know they're going to get the lowest price. Differentiation is, you have a boutique ski shop, and you know that if you go to that boutique ski shop, you're going to find the best products around that are more functional than any other products that are out there. So you're really different from the competition. Now you can take cost leadership, and you can take differentiation, and you can focus into a certain market segment on cost leadership, or focus on a certain market segment in differentiation. But there's a risk in that. And the risk is that because it's such a small part of the market, if things change, like preferences or the technology, then everything that you've invested in just gets wiped away. All right, so you got to be careful about the focus part, but just understand that you can do that, right? And then the functional strategy, well, you're down at the functional level, so you can have, say, a production strategy of 0 defects, and make sure that maintains your quality, because your strategy, or your critical success factor in your strategy, is that quality is boss. That's what sells in your footprint of sales operation. So that's the functional strategy that you'll adopt, right? So that's how this comes together. So again, you can see that there's a lot highlighted around corporate strategies, and here's where we start talking about concentration, backward vertical integration, forward vertical integration, horizontal integration, and related diversification and unrelated diversification. So let me start with concentration. So concentration is that your total focus on a particular technology. You don't have large product lines, and you do best what you're doing. And if you take a look at Apple, when Jobs said, we're going to limit the number of products we have, that's a deliberate concentration strategy. When he decided, because we're going to be good in all those products, people are going to see the quality, and that's what this concentration is going to do for us. What backwards in vertical integration is, let's say that I'm just trying to think of it. Okay, so we're a company that owns grocery stores, and meat is the biggest part of our profit. All right. So what we're going to do then is that we're going to get into the meat business and tie up, the supply chain, so that we can maintain quality and have more competitive pricing and everything else. So that's a backward strategy. You've gone backwards up the supply chain and you bought something. Okay, and then on the other side, let's just say that for forward integration is that you're a bakery and you sell bread to all these small corner stores, but you have another bakery that's getting into your territory. So what do is you buy up all these corner stores, okay, so that they will have exclusive purchasing of your bread products. So that's forward vertical integration. And then there's horizontal integration. So what it is that you're a producer of water vehicles, like I think they call them Sea-Doos or boats. And what you do then is that you have a lot of competition in that area. So what do is you buy out your competition, and then you become the overall area supplier of boats. All right, so that's related diversification. All right, or let's say that you're this producer of watercraft, and so what do you do in the winter? In Canada, well, you can't sell watercraft in Canada in the winter, so you decide to get into wintercraft, like snow machines. So that's a unrelated diversification, right? Just like when Google bought YouTube, Google was in the information business, YouTube was in the video transfer business. I know a little bit of unrelated diversification, and all of a sudden, they've got some big combination to attack the market with, right? So that's what that's all about. So here now, just a little bit more about corporate strategy. So in terms of corporate strategy, you can have a growth strategy, you can have a stability strategy, you can have a retention strategy. So I talked about these two, but let's talk about, I just kind of went through on this growth strategy and talked about concentration, vertical integration, horizontal integration, cost leadership, diversification, all those things. So you want to, you really want to kind of look at this piece. But again, now we're going to talk about retrenchment strategies, and there's three retrenchment strategies. So one is a liquidation. So what that means is that you know you've been milking the cow, like on the BCG matrix. You've been milking the cow, and all of a sudden now the market is just absolutely changed. You can't sell this, and the thing is, it's an old technology. So what do? You just take apart the building. Maybe you sell the building, you liquidate the building, right? You take apart the equipment, and then in some cases, you know, you just sell that to a scrap dealer because nobody's using it, and then you sell all your inventory. So that's the liquidation part. The turnaround is that you say, this isn't working. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from scratch. You know, we're gonna just, you know, start from scratch. We're gonna approach this business in a very different way, and this is a big risk, right? Because you don't know how that's going to go. You're looking at timing, which is you know, it could be really hard if something happens in between your building of your process and everything else. You're looking at the overall expenses, cost overruns, all those things, and then divestment is saying, you know what, here we are, we're a construction, and we build houses, we build garages, and we build mobile buildings. And you know what, the mobile business really isn't working for us, and we don't want to spread our focus. So what we're going to do is we're going to sell that mobile business to another mobile provider, right? That's divestment. So those are the retrenchment strategies. But this one here, oh, look at this. All right, so some more yellow. So it addresses serious performance issues. So it's a real serious deal, but I wanted you to get a sense of what this is all about. Typically involves a fundamental and often radical change in the organization's core business model, in the structure, in its processes, in the culture and operations. And this is a high risk, and you can get into a big severe crisis, such as financial distress or declining market share or significant loss of public trust. So that's you know, that's a really important piece to understand. Okay, I talked about cost leadership. You know, I think I used Walmart as an example, but in any case, you know, if you know that you want to buy let's say DVDs, you probably get the best deal at Walmart because they'll guarantee a low price. I talked about this focus strategy. So, you know, we're into these competitive strategies, which Porter himself calls generic strategies. They're on the business level. And here's this piece that I talked about. And, you know, overall cost leadership. I mean, you know that like Best Buy says, you know, if you find something cheaper than what this is for sale, you know, we'll reimburse you the difference and then even give you a little more. And then if you do this cost leadership, you know, in a unique market like a smaller market, smaller segmentation, well then, you know, that if anything happens, then you know that's high risk. And same with differentiation. So you gotta understand that piece. Okay, so now we're at the participation topic 9B. It's been changed, right? So all you have to do now is a balanced scorecard and a balanced scorecard strategy map for Tim Hortons. Again, you know, you can use ChatGPT to help you out in this. It's a team thing. So 9A and 9B are both team uploads. So one person in your group can be in charge of uploading that piece, and we'll mark it. Here's the mission and vision and values that already that were out there for Tim Hortons. So again, that sets the tone, right? Because here, just take a look. The vision, the quality leader in everything we do. Okay, so that tells you that in your balanced scorecard under customer, right, there's got to be some KPI around quality, right? So that gives you context again on how to set this up. Values, make a difference, customer first. That's, you know, telling you customer intimacy. So again, in your customers, you should have a KPI that deals with that. Personal, like cooperation. So on your growth piece, your on the growth piece, you take a look at, how do you train people to be more collaborative, right? So this really gives you a clue as to what should be in your balanced scorecard. And again, it breaks down. So this piece here, the cooperation and the stewardship, should show up in this learning and growth. So here they are. And again, you can see just on this illustration, you can see where, what does this lead to in terms of outcomes that are translated from objectives? What are the measures in terms of key performance indicators? What are the targets? And then what are the, the initiatives that come out of those objectives and special projects? And again, the vision and strategy has a key context. The vision, mission, and strategy has key context over, where these should be. So to understand that, and lo and behold, here's a format that Professor Powers put in the slide deck. You can use this to complete your and fill these out, for your activity. And then here's some directives around, what the strategy map is all about. But what you need to remember is that it's all connected, right? And you can see you start with, learning and growth. And learning and growth in today's, in the, the more recent writings of balanced scorecard is talked a lot more in terms of internal capacity and capability. So that kind of gives you an idea of what your learning and growth objectives or goals should look like. And you can see then is that you can trace, you start with, building capacity, and then from the capacity that really has a influence on what kind of internal business processes you're going to use, because that's, capacity leads to that. And then exactly what does it do to your customers? And then at the end of the day, customers are giving you money. So how are you going to deal on the financial end? So it all this internal capacity drives internal process, which drives customer satisfaction and loyalty, and which translates into improved financial results. So that's the key on taking a look at that. Here's an example that I use when I did this for an organization. I think this is what was this? This was a victim services organization, and we started out, so we called the customer clients in this case, and we talked about the stakeholders. So this is how this all connected. Okay, this next section is goal setting versus management by objectives. And management by objectives has been around forever, and I think it's almost like it's not even talked about anymore. It's just inherent in the process. So you should really understand what that is. And again, it's a formulation for cascading, goals down the organization, and they're measurable and they're jointly set. So it's a sort of a collaborative approach from a higher level of management, being collaborative with a medium level of management that sets goals, and that medium level of management is collaborative with the lower level of managers, and those lower level of managers are collaborative with helping their employees set goals. So there's a complete alignment in the overall goals. And I think here's this kind of sets the stream here. So what you do is you set corporate objectives, and then they then ultimately going down the levels, they're jointly set, and then you develop action plans to achieve that, you review them, and then you reward them. So that's how it goes, and it goes down from top management to division to department to individual employees. And then I think here's a little bit of a conundrum, is that if you go into the literature, some people call goals objectives and some people call objectives goals, right? So in the structure that I'm familiar with, a goal is an overriding area direction, right? And an objective is very, like a functional, sort of a focused piece of work that gets to an outcome, right? So that's how that works. And that's all that I have for you now in this thing, but I just want to get you back to this performance alignment framework that I talked about. So you can see that if you want to set clarity in the organization, there's a lot of tools that you use. It's not just one thing. It's not just communicating clearly. You know, it's all about, you know, aligning everything with beliefs, with core values, with the purpose of the organization. What principles are established so that employees can follow those principles? You know, what's the intention of the organization? What's the overall vision? And then how do you direct that? And then here's how you focus. You focus through goals, these critical success factors, the strategies that get you right down into the systems thinking about how to establish this from a system point of view. And then how do you impact? Well, good old commitment, a good old fashioned discipline, you know, setting those objectives and initiatives and programs. And then routines and habits. And the, you know, the health industry in the UK, when they adopted total quality management principles in terms of having set routines and checklists on everything that they do, a lot less lawsuits, you know, a lot less, you know, leaving something inside of somebody, you know, in the operating room, you know. So there's all these areas where you can, you know, if you can align, then, you know, your outcomes, your results will be fantastic. And then using, you know, the tools of the day in terms of time management and process management to be able to get there. So that's key. And I think you need to remember that. I just want to talk to you about one more little piece. And this is something that I developed maybe 25 years ago, I guess. You know, it talks about, you know, what's a strategic issue. I think I've covered that a little bit. But then you have these strategic issues. And again, remember, we go back to the Franklin Covey Institute, and they're saying you better have a few, you know, superior goals to look at, you know, those, you know, wildly important goals. So how can you get down to just a few? Well, you rank them. And here's how I come up with this criteria. You know, how serious is that issue? Can you manage that issue? Because sometimes it's out of your control and you can't do anything. How urgent is that issue? And is that issue getting, you know, is it getting better or is it getting worse? Is that problem, you know, just accelerating an opportunity, or is it decelerating? And that's how you can get to this. So seriousness is basically, you know, is this going to break the company in 6 months? Well, that would be a 5 out of 5. Seriousness, well, no, you know, it's not really affecting us that much. Well, that would be like a 1 out of 5. Manageability. All right, can we deal with this issue? No, we don't have the capability. It's outside of our hands. Well, that's a 1 or a 0 out of 5. But hey, we have full control. We can really make a change here. Oh, that's a 5. You know, how urgent? You know, is this does this need to happen in 2 weeks? Oh, that's a 5. Or can it happen in 3 years? Oh, that's a 1, right? And then growth. Is it accelerating in a problem? Well, that's a 5. No, is it kind of stable? Well, it might be a 2 or a 3, right? So what you do then is that you rate this issue for seriousness, manageability, urgency, and growth out of 5, and you get a total. And you can see if you have a higher number here, it has a higher ranking. So so this one here had 16 versus 9. So this is the top issue. And I'll tell you something now. Like I've done a lot of in-person facilitation before COVID, and I've used this many times. And I'd say 95% of the time, just after doing this, people agree that yes, that's the ranking. And 5% of the time, they'd say, well, you know, I'm not so sure if the third rank is really the third rank and should be maybe the fourth rank, and the fourth rank should be the third rank. And we'd have a rich discussion about that and then come to a conclusion. But it's all about, you have, you know, it's down to economics. You have scarce resources to create as much competitive advantage as you possibly can to increase your profit. And again, your triple bottom line in terms of how you protect the social side of things and how you protect the environment, so that you could make the best and leverage your efforts. So that's what that's all about. So that's it for this piece. You know, I did send out a notice about test number 2, And if you take a look at that, notice the front end part is, for topics 5, 6, 5 and 6. Yeah. I've got sort of summaries of what to focus on, and then 7 and 8 go back to the commentary presentations, and you've got those on video. You can go to my YouTube channel and pick them up and have a look at them, and it's the focus areas that are in yellow to give you an idea of really what's important. Okay, so I'm hoping that's good, and just keep bringing those questions in, and then I'd appreciate it if you do have a question, use my regular RDP email. I'll get to you sooner that way. And then if I answer your question, I'm sure to put that on an announcement on Blackboard to help the rest of your colleagues. Okay, so we'll talk to you later.